Greetings and welcome back to another great episode of the RAD podcast. Happy Halloween, everyone. My mama hit me with some happy Hallowfest. I was like, I ain't never heard that in my life. But I was like, whatever you say. But happy Halloween. I hope everyone is having a great day and you had a terrific Monday. I am one half of this dynamic team. My name's Larry Jefferson, straight out of Dallas, Texas, home of the best everything. Except the
Except for
football team.
barbecue, man. Y'all don't know how to do
Except the
barbecue
football
out there,
team and
bro.
basketball team.
Well, wait a minute. Y'all did pretty good last night with the Dallas Cowboys with the football team. So I think
Hey,
we're
hey,
gonna
don't
be
be
good.
talking about that. I'm from Chicago. Don't be beating up on the
Oh,
Bears.
And I'm a Houston Texans fan, so
Hey, but the Houston Texans
we'll
lost
say
to my
no
Titans
more.
yesterday, though.
I didn't see that game.
Oh, okay. That's what
Purposely.
we talking about now.
I ain't see the game. Anyway,
You ain't seriously.
Dantrayl Smith, representing the great city of Memphis, Tennessee. Glad to be here. Super excited about the episode we have today. Real quickly, last week, as you all know, we have to reschedule an episode. Last week, we were talking about our sex talk. And so we will reschedule that episode for December 12th. And so we'll send out all the details about that upcoming episode. But this time, we're transitioning to our next mini series, which is focusing on education reform. And so we have great panelists that are here today to really kind of dive in and talk about this new law as Texas lawmakers are trying to put in effect for our elementary school on up. And so I'm super excited about this conversation because it's been something that's dear to my heart, and I know definitely to the individuals that are on this panel. So, yeah.
so without further ado, we'll allow our panelists to introduce themselves.
Okay, well, I guess I will start. My name is Tremaine Anderson, and I serve as Vice President for Instruction at Odessa College. That is out about 4.5 hours west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I actually have been here 2.5 years. I'm originally from the Permian Basin. I'm a West Texan, but I got to spend the last 14 to 15 years as a educator at Tarrant County College. I started out as a history professor at TCC Northeast Campus, teaching U.S. history, and I spent some time with African American studies as well as a part of Dallas College. So I bring this to you all. Greetings from the great West Texas region, and glad to be on the podcast today.
Okay, my name is Brother Ricky Clark. I'm a native of Chicago by way of Africa, and I've been living here in Texas for about the last 25 years. I'm a graduate of Jarvis Christian University. They used to be Jarvis Christian College. That's what brought me here. And currently, I'm the executive director for the Fourth ISD My Brother's Keeper initiative that was started by Barack Obama in 2014. Currently, we're responsible for 17 high schools and a few middle schools. So I design, implement, and coordinate programs designed to work with hard-to-serve youth. I'm also an author. I've written 2 books, self-published books, one entitled What My Daddy Should Have Told Me, Life Lessons for the African-American Male. And my newest book is called From Kindergarten to 12th Grade, Can Equal 13 Years a Slave.
Okay.
Right? Can equal 13 years a slave. So I go throughout the country lecturing and speaking. The last place I've been was in, I did TCU last month, and TCU, Prairie View, and the University of San Antonio. And I'm excited to be here. I love what I do so much. I would do it for free, but I've become so good at it. I now get paid for it. So can you imagine somebody paying you to do something you love doing so much you would do it for free? So I'm excited for you all having me here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go ahead and dive in because I know a lot of our listeners are probably new to this term when we talk about involuntary relocation. So talk a little bit about, what does that term mean? How did it all kind of circulate, come about? Let's give some historical context for our listeners.
Well, I mean, we both can talk about this together. Involuntary relocation. If we know anything and you know anything about the state legislature, they've been doing this for a while. If we go back in history, I mean, we can go back to the early 19th century, 20th century. We don't have a lot of time to do that. But in 2015, There has been quite a bit of state legislation in forming social studies curriculum. In 2015, they came up with the idea of calling slaves workers. And so this was about the time that I was teaching, in which that was a topic that I would address in class. Like, how do we now begin to discuss enslaved or slaves as workers? What is that? Why are we making that adjustment? Let's talk about the concepts behind that. So this is something that's been going on since 2015. Here recently with the political aspects within the state of Texas and across the country, we've definitely been seeing a lot of changes in the rhetoric and language, and now legislation tied around the wording and the rhetoric that we use within teaching and instruction in the classroom. So by 2021, we have Senate Bill 3 that is supposed to develop student civic knowledge and focuses on social studies curriculum in Texas public schools. And then this is where we begin the gateway of talking about now moving from the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, to now saying involuntary relocation and what that means. By this time, we then really move into, and it's really House Bill 3979 that started the whole process of looking at what public school students in Texas can be taught. And then it was House Bill 3 that made the change to the language. It's mostly focused on K through second grade, or really our elementary students, in the terms that we're beginning to use and civic knowledge and so on and so forth. I will like to put in the fact that not only did Texas make this move in 2021 and 2022, we'll actually find out, hopefully in a couple of days, from the state legislature of what their recommendations from this committee will be from using those terms. However, I want to kind of give you a carrot and a point here, because not only are we making these political moves with the words that we're using, but Texas in 2020 is also incorporating a African-American studies course. So we have that in 2020, we have an African-American course, but now by 2021, now we're here in 2022, we have this new update of the language that we're using with our younger students. And so that involuntary relocation is, it started with, we were talking about slaves being workers. Now we're moving more in creeping on involuntary. What does that mean? Relocation.
Yeah.
Is it not just kidnapping? Is it not? So those terms start to be used as far as the reviewing and adopting of it. So that's just a little historical context. I would say that we've been doing this for a long time. So I want our audience to know that this is not anything new. This is stuff that the state legislature, not just here in this state, but other states across the US have been doing and ensuing for some time now.
If I could veggie back off of that, thank you, sister, for sharing that. And I actually, I was excited about being here. So I work with young people. So I actually took these comments into the classroom starting last week. And then today I was at Dantrayl, right? And I asked the question, what does involuntary relocation mean? And the kids, okay, well, I said, well, go look it up. Look the definition, pull it up. They was like, well, that means that you agreed to come here. I said, now use your own words. She said, well, it means that you agreed to come here and work. Like immigrants, we came to come and work. And she was like, well, no, we were not immigrants. And if I could veggie back over what the sister said, I said, no, they're not telling you that part right. I said, read it. Nobody volunteered to come here. Nobody volunteered to play. And what I said to them is, it's only when you begin your history in the state of freedom that you come to properly understand your role. So I'm not excited about the African-American curriculum or any of those curriculums if you're going to begin my history in slavery. Nobody begins a history in slavery. We call people certain things because of their land base. You call Chinese as a land called China, but there's no land called nigger land, Negro land, colored land, black land, African-American land. There's no African-American land, but there is a land called Africa. And if you don't love the root, then you can't love the fruit. So when we talk to children, you got to make it realistic, something they can touch, see, and feel. So when you asked me that question, I was like, Mr. Ricky, that's what that means. I said, don't go by what I say. What? Google it. Pull it up. So they start pulling the information up, and they like, what do you mean? So if one of the things that I do to get away from it, so if it passes in December, when we come back in January, you can't talk like that. You know what I told them today? They're like, well, what we gonna say? You ain't never heard me talk about slavery. Slavery is not African history.
That's right.
Slavery is the interruption of African history. It lasted few years in Mali, Shanghai, Ghana. So when I teach the kids, by the time we get in slavery, we out of school. I ain't talking about slavery. No way. That's not important to me. Come on, man. It's like, oh, you
Right.
don't off of that. And what gets me is even when we talking to the people, they like, well, we're gonna put. I don't give a darn about. I don't teach those kids that stuff. They hear that late, they can come to a conclusion. So what you do is you go in there and start teaching them who they are and whose they are, and it changes. He mentioned the third grade. My grandson in third grade. If you go to him right now, I wish I had him in here with me. He will tell you the father. So last week he was struggling with his math work, right? So his grandma will call, you better come get this boy. I say, Ricky, man, you know how to do that? I say, well, who's the father of medicine? Imhotep. Who's the father of math? Imhotep. Who designed the step pyramid? I say, so we invented math. Now look at it again. He looks at the work. He did it. He say, Paul, check it. I said, no, I'm not going to check it. You check it. He looks at it. He said, they're all right. So I asked the kids in school, why did you think my son said it was all right? Why do you think he got the problems right when I told him who he was? She said, because he got pride in himself.
You're
and when
right.
you about yourself, you can master any subject. And the reason why our children
I've been basically speaking to what I know and as we operate today. So with that being said, when I talk to
I think we got to use
Okay.
Sorry about that, brother. Go ahead.
when we work with our children, you mentioned something about he's 8. So when you ask him who's the father of math, he ain't gonna talk slavery. He gonna say Imhotep, right? So I took him to get a physical. He asked the doctor, do you know who invented that stethoscope? The doctor didn't know. He said, Paul, he don't know. I said, well, ask him who is Imhotep. He said he didn't know. I said, well, ask him what is the Hippocratic Oath. He said, yeah. I said, do you all still say the Hippocratic Oath? He said, yeah. I said, well, in the oath, it says Asquetu Asclepius, the god of medicine. Asclepius is the name that the Greeks gave Imhotep. He said, I didn't know that. So the point I'm trying to make, our kids can look between that foolishness. And what I would say to people, let them teach what they want to, because if you ain't teaching your children at home, they blow their mind anyway when they get to the school. If they don't know that before they get home, before they get to school, it's too late.
Wow.
It's too late. So I don't get caught up in that. I'm not going back and forth about no CRT. I call that culturally relevant learning. I mean, culturally relevant teaching. They need that, right? And it says critical. So you got to think anyway. Don't you want them thinking? But if we go by the curriculum that they gave us, we will continue to use the N word. We'll continue to say these words. So I see grown men. What's up, my N? You want to know why these kids are? Because it's been embedded in their act for 50 years, 60 years, 61 years. If that's all you heard for 61 years, I don't give a damn what you teach. That's all I know.
That's right. Yeah.
I got a PhD. I got a master's, but you don't know that thing. And some over there, if y'all know anything about Dantrayl and YMLA, they scholastic. Dantrayl, they smart as a whip. But you ask them something about their culture, they can't tell you nothing, man. Can't tell you socially, and they don't do it. So my comment in reference to this is, and I'll let you two speak. Mine is teach them what they need to learn before they get there. Then we don't have to discuss this when they get home. I
wholeheartedly agree.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Wow.
And I do recall when I first heard about this conversation, thinking to myself, what the hell are they even talking about? Especially being that I just came back from Ghana when I first heard about it, and to hear about the stories of what happened, and just to understand it even better from the motherland perspective versus what I'm taught here, just really blew my mind. However, being that we have differences in our generations, and how do you think our new age generation, our new students, those that are not educated at home, how will they interpret what all of this means, the involuntary relocation versus slavery?
I don't think they would interpret it. I think they would just go over them like all the rest of the laws that we have, right? Nobody goes back. As laws being passed, there is nobody, let me repeat that, nobody that goes back into the classroom and explain to the children what laws are being passed and how it affects them.
Wow.
So if they don't know nothing about it, I'm talking about college students too. How would they know? They have no clue. So I asked the kid, and I hope you ain't on the phone when I say this, but I asked one of the boys, well, who's the mayor of Fort Worth? He said Greg Abbott. And he goes to TCU.
Wow.
TC. He had
Yeah.
he said Greg Abbott. So you
Wow.
got some folks that don't know that information. And that's my thing. You can't blame the victims for being victimized. You go in there and you ask them, well, what does the mayor look like? What she look like? They can't tell you what she look like. Well, let me ask you, gentlemen on the phone, and I'm not being facetious. Do you know anybody that sit on the water board? Then it was quiet, huh? Do you know what they meet? Do you know how often they meet?
No.
Do you know that the Tarrant County Water Region, not board, Tarrant County Regional Water Board covers the water all the way from East Texas, all the way past down and all the way back. So that means the people in Fort Worth make the decisions about anybody using water all the way to East Texas and back.
Wow.
You know that? Anybody know that? So those are kind of things that we talking about. You talking about making them politically astute. They don't know. I'm gonna leave you on this, and you ask me what do they do. So you teach them, and let me tell you how I teach them. The same way we talking. If you can learn a rap song, you can learn anything. What's the mayor's name? Maddie Parker. What's the mayor's name? Maddie Parker. What's the mayor's name? Maddie Parker. Who sits on the water board? Leah King. Who sit on the water board? Leah King. So if I ask you tomorrow who sit on the water board, what you gonna say? Leah King.
Right.
So you teach them, and that's how I teach. So everything I do is call and response. We don't take notes. You either know it or you don't. But if you, as much as they repeat them damn rap songs,
they should be able to do this.
Fellas, ladies, they want to learn. When I
They
was
do.
at Dantrayl today, bruh, the lunch been over, Mr. Ricky. I'm like, well, why didn't y'all say something? They said, because we learning. I've been in school all these years. I'm going to graduate. I ain't never heard none of that.
You know, and
I told me about the pyramids or things like that. So I don't teach slavery.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to jump in for a little bit because I agree with Brother Clark. I think you have to, there's cultural competence. And, you know, I'm Terrell, you know, we talk about the students, the population of students that we have there. And I think that, you know, going below the curriculum in depth, you know, I taught, you know, post-secondary community college students, and they don't know this. So you have to be able to connect critical thinking to relevancy. You have to be able to connect it to their everyday lives, walking down the street. Being at Stop 6, I had to connect everything to where the student was. And if we know about anything about African culture, who we are, identity, your center. I mean, when I went to Howard University, I grew up out here in the middle of West Texas in dirt, right? I didn't know much about the Black culture and Hotep and, you know, Timbuktu and that until I went to college. I didn't even get that at UNT. But when I went to Howard, that's where my world changed. I knew about the African diaspora. I was exposed. So I took that, what I learned every step of the way in my journey. And I said, I'm going to bring that back to the students that I'm teaching every day to educate them, to help them be able to research and to understand. Just because you come from this side of the tracks or your zip code is in the lowest, you know, district doesn't mean that you can't do what you need to do to be able to learn. So that curriculum piece, knowing who they are, connecting it to relevancy of where they're at is the way that we're going to be able to connect to our Gen Z and to this generation that we have within our classrooms. And community. We've got to have, I love your idea. What about Saturday school? What do we do during the civil rights movement? Right? African school. Like we had in our own communities way in which the church, that was the center of the way that we communicated, and we got with our young folks, and we did the lessons. It wasn't in the schoolhouse. We didn't leave it to the ISDs. We didn't leave it to the public schools. It was mom and them that cooked whatever they needed to do to help us get there wherever we were. So we really need to go back to those community schools and circles and griots. I feel like Brother Clark is that. That's how we get back to the basics. That's how we get to beyond what we're seeing here.
So, Dr. Anderson, let me ask a follow-up question, and Brother Clark, you can answer it as well. If this is how we educated our young and help them be more aware of everything that's going on and be aware of where they come from, why did it
Okay. Can y'all hear?
I can hear now.
Okay, there we go. So
Right.
why did it say the question again, brother?
So why aren't our young males, young females aware of all of this knowledge? You know, why have those Saturday classes that you mentioned, these African schools that was brought up as well? Why do you not hear about them as much anymore?
I can share with you. Well,
Oh,
one
okay.
thing that you don't hear about it because culture human beings like fish to water. Let me repeat that. Culture human beings like fish to water. We bought into this American culture, right? So if you're culturally, you've been going through this stuff for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, you can't associate with Africa, right?
Mm.
And everything we've ever heard about Africa is bad, right? Everything you heard about Africa, a brother looked just like me, but when I asked if he was African, he turned his head, right? So they don't know that it's in us. And I'm so glad there's two things you remind of, DNA and World War Wide Web. I'm so glad those two things came into place because without the DNA, you don't know that you come from an African root. And they say that the apple don't fall that far from the tree. Well, if it's sitting on the hill, it can roll so far from the tree that you don't know you're a part of it. Now you acting differently. You are apple, but you acting like an orange because you grew up among oranges. And most of us in this city, that's all we know. We don't know anything different. Can I get even deeper than that? Our parents don't know. And if I want to get even deeper, our parents' parents don't know. So our first teacher is your mother. That's why it's called the mother tongue, the mother wit, the motherland. So if the mother don't know, there's no way the children gonna know. And we know that you determine the strength of a nation by as women, not by as men. So you hear a lot of things, men this, men that. But we get teaching the girls, teach the women, they will teach the babies. And the reason we turned away from it is because somebody told us and we believed that we were not African. We started believing that we're African Americans. And there's no American land. And if you are African American, you don't associate with Africa, only with your name. And you said you went to Ghana, right? I got lots of friends from Ghana. Can I tell you something? All of Africa was colonialized. Even in Africa, the information I'm sharing with you now, they don't know this information. Where they books from? They come from Great Britain. So if you go to Africa right now today in Ghana, you can't, they don't know this information. You hear me? They from Africa. Majority of them don't know it. I worked with some Africans about a year ago, so I teach the class. The guy came into the classroom and heard me talking. He was like, well, Mr. Ricky, the first time I heard you talking, I thought you didn't like white people. I was like, why? I said, I'm not caught up in that white stuff. I said, my granddaddy white. He was like, yeah, but the way you, I said, truth ain't got no holes. And he said, I know. And the more I sat in your classroom, I had to ask myself, how do you know more about Africa than I do? And I'm born and raised in that. Choose not to. Remember, these kids came through a refugee camp. You think they teach them about Africa at the refugee camp? You think they teach them about that? I'm in a fraternity. I'm an alpha. Let me leave you with this. These are people with PhDs. And bro, look at the back of my phone. The Apple been bitch. You can ask Siri anything. I got frat brothers who are with PhDs and don't know this information. We still calling the darn Sphinx a Sphinx. It's not a Sphinx. It's a hermaphrodite. A Sphinx got. And when I talk to them, they challenge by like, what are you saying, brother? I was like, wait a minute. We built the pyramids.
That's right.
They were built 3200 BCE. And then you go over and see the Greeks. They don't come on the scene in 30 BCE. So if you were a child, you would think that 30 came before 32. And it does. But they had to count 3200 down, then count up 30. Then the Greeks come on the scene. So let me ask you a question like I do everywhere I go. It says 12 inches equals a what?
Foot.
Whose foot? They say 12 inches equals a foot. Mine don't equal a foot. Who foot? So it was a king's foot. We the one taught measurements. They didn't teach us. We taught them. The first style of writing is hieroglyphics. Well, what does hieroglyphics mean? The Greeks call it hieroglyphics. It's really called metuneta. And metuneta means the writing of the gods. So when anybody bring up CRT, I don't start there. That's why I'm not caught up in 1619. Nobody began their history in slavery. You want to talk about Kemet? You want to take me to Timbuktu? Then once you do that part, then the kids got a different ear, bro. They listen different. Because if it's all about slavery, hell, I don't want to hear it. Do you hear what I said?
You're right.
If it's just slavery, I don't want to hear it. Look at the word history. Who wins the war, right? History. But why my story sound like mystery?
Right.
There's a reason for that. You understand what I'm saying? You'll get there when you get home. But they told me that Alexander built the first library. You know what I'll say? Yeah, he did. He built the first library where they buried the live. But he didn't build the first library. And most black people, when you ask, they say they going to the library. Well, I get my book from the library. It's not a library, it's called a library. But subconsciously, we know it's where the lives are buried. How you gonna build the first library? Where you get the books from? You couldn't read or write. And we going around talking about Alexander the Great. That's Alexander the Barbaric. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we call him great. So we being programmed. And we gonna have to do is reprogram. Don't get caught up in the CRT. Let them pass all them damn laws they want to. Hell, they pass laws that say that you can't have your seatbelt on. And I'm saying a whole lot of people with their seatbelt on, right?
Right.
So what we're gonna do is put the seatbelt back on and say, okay, regardless of what you say, teach them, we're gonna teach them ourselves. And we go back to it. Let me leave you with this. There were 5 things black people couldn't do during slavery. Couldn't learn to read and write, couldn't beat drums, couldn't have church without a white person, couldn't own firearms, right? And couldn't testify in court. But 5 things we did to resist it was we learned to read and write. We did deliberate work slowdowns. We burned bonds and poisoned the slave owners. So we've been fighting against this oppression for years, but nobody talks about it.
That's right.
So in my conversation, when you asked me, I knew you weren't going to just stay on the CRT. Just no. You. But think about this right here. If you look at the things to be, why would we concern ourselves with a bill that doesn't help us? It really ain't going to hurt us because they ain't taught us sugar, honey, iced tea anyway. Here's what I'll say to the principal, and I'll leave you. I'm talking to the principal and the superintendent and the president of the college. Here's the question I ask. Principal of high school, president college, superintendent would be over the school board. Can you name a book from kindergarten to 12th grade that's required reading that speaks positive about people of color? I'll wait. Good question, huh, sis? Can you think of a book from kindergarten to 12th grade, Brother Larry, that speaks positive about people of color? That's what's required reading. What would you say?
Maybe that's why I didn't read a lot of them.
Right. That's why I've got to start to expose them to that. Some type of books. Right.
Can you name a time when black people were not enslaved and empowered, meaning we run it? And guess what they say when I say that? They get quiet. Quiet as a church house mouse. And I look at them and I say, can you name a time? And they be like, I say, don't answer that question. Here's a question I want you to ask. Think about this. What if your little brother, what if your grandson and granddaughter came to you and said, Dantrayl, Larry, Sister Anderson, can you tell me a time when black people not enslaved and empowered? And these your biological kids.
Right.
Somebody else kids. You got some twins talking like that. And they come to you and they ask you. I said, don't answer the question. I'm asking all 3 of y'all, how does that make you feel? Damn the answer. How does it make you feel that your children come to you and ask you those questions and you can't tell them a time we was in freedom? Or are you going to tell them we just freedom? That's the question.
Get it.
So when you showed me this, and I'm thinking, come on, man, put all them damn bills up there if you want to, because the more you put up there, the more we need to teach our children. And can I tell you something, bro? When I go talk to the kids, they love this. They don't want to leave. I went to an elementary school and lectured for 2 hours at an elementary school. The exact same thing that I lecture at TCU. And they sat like this. They didn't play. They weren't fidgeting. They weren't turning things. They didn't have to have something to play with to keep their mind focused. Now, I do something that's a little different. I do bring in a wad of money. I say, okay, look at it. So once I get their attention, Larry, I know I ain't getting away with $20. Now, that's a whole month, but I ain't getting away with $20. Look how much attention I get for $1, $2. And then the kids, they said, no, you ain't got to give me no money. I just want to learn, Mr. Ricky.
Yeah.
It's funny, I did that. I did that same thing for a presentation, and I said, $5 for the first person that can tell me anything that the speaker said prior to me getting up to speak. Because when I was asking questions, they didn't know nothing. But as soon as you start throwing that money out, everybody wanted to
Oh, man.
participate.
And so I brought that up because you were asking, how do we get the young folks to get that interest? I'll leave you with this. I've always been taught, know your audience.
Yeah.
So I walk in there and I'm 61. Y'all may not know that. But I'm 61.
Look good. You looking good, brother.
Yeah, you look great. Fantastic.
I'm 61 and I'm not a rapper, but I know rap songs.
Right.
Well, why do you know the rap song? And I'll go in there and I'll quote, what's the one? I took a look at my wrist. I got time today. I'm crossing the line today. They hate be real, the love be fake. They bump them gums, they bump them tapes. Don't go against me, then ask me for help. Get out of your feelings and get it yourself. I'm 61. They like, wait a minute. How you know that? I was like, well, how do you think I learned that? They said, how do you know those songs? Guess what my response is? Because I want to. So how you gonna learn this history? You gotta want to.
Want it.
You gotta want to.
You gotta want to. And guess what? After I say that to them, they
get it.
Take the dollars away. I want to learn this. I said, and if you can repeat what I say, they pay people for this. Go in there and repeat. They know it verbatim over and over. How old is man? 4 million years old. What if I said 2 million? Wrong. What if I said 3 million? Wrong. What if I say 4 million? They say wrong. What is it? Over 4 million years. So if they can learn a rap song, what my man, what's his name? Public Enemy says, we urge to merge. We live with the love of our people and hope they get along. Getting the point to our brothers and sisters who don't know the time. So I wrote a rhyme, stuck in your head. You know, my job is to build and collect ourselves with intellect, to evolve, to revolve, the self-respect, because we got to keep ourselves in check, or else it's self-destruction. Or when you talk
Go
to
ahead, Doctor.
make sure that you costly understand them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Anderson.
So,
no, I mean, the response to that is, I think our kiddos are hungry for it, and we've got to meet them where they're at. I mean, knowing, you know, the rap lyrics, knowing, you know, what they're listening to. I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter. I introduced her to Nas, right? When he talked about, I know I can, and he was spitting the history of what was going on. And I broached that conversation with her and started talking about, you know, the connection of who we were before, understanding that piece. And so we've got to meet them where they are. They're hungry for it. They want it. And, you know, it's beyond the textbook. You know, me being a person that was in education and instruction and now a vice president, I know that even now in the seat that I sit in, that there's decisions that can be made. There's curriculum changes that we can do. There's ways that we can get around it to teach. And so that, you know, we have to be in all places. I need you all to be in the seats that you are. I need Brother Clark going out to the students and I am Dantrayl in the elementary schools. And we need to be having these Saturday schools. And then I have a part too in the seat that I sit in and where I'm at to be able to make policy changes and advocate for instructors and advocate for studies and more information. So all parts are needed. Our children are needing it. Our families, we need to reach out to the community and do more work there. I definitely agree. It goes beyond all this other stuff. We can talk about it all day. They're going to pass the bill. They're not going to do it. We're going to have politics. But until we teach ourselves, I mean, look at it. What if the exact thing that they did to us was take our identity, right? We go through the process. When I taught U.S. history, I didn't begin in slavery. I didn't even begin when we're talking about the first people and the First Nations, with Native Americans, begin with them being colonized. I begin with who are they? That's important to know who you are. Who you are. Don't begin with America, don't Christopher Columbus, none of that. We got to know First Nations. We got to know about Africa. We need to know about the empires. They're ethnic groups. They're not tribes. All of those things, you drop that knowledge, you start to get them hungry for more than what they're being taught in the curriculum and textbooks. That's how you draw them in. And we need our families to be a part, no matter what. They are a part of the process as well. It's important.
Can I ask y'all a question?
So I got a question. Oh, go ahead, brother.
I'll wait.
Well, my question is in follow up everything that you are talking about. So we have a law and different laws that are being passed to really hinder the modes of teaching through K through 12. And so my question is, for years, Brother Clark, I mean, and Dr. Anderson, you all have talked about, we've always found ways to go around, right? And so my question to you is, how can we, as educators who have, I guess, in the quote unquote, learned and learned this knowledge, how do we get into the family dynamics to get to the home space to really educate those families so that they're building that knowledge? Because we know talking about this in the classroom is not, I mean, unless you're in brother Clark's class, but you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
this conversation is not going to take place in K through 12 in their school. And so
Hell, it
at
ain't taking place
home, we
in
don't
higher ed
have
either.
those. You said what?
It ain't taking place in higher ed either.
No,
Well,
no,
no,
no.
facts.
I like I'm listening to you, Brother Dantrayl, Dr. Smith now. I'm excited. I think I love the Black Panther Party, and I love what they did is that they found a way to connect with they were in the community, so we need to be outside of the four walls. The ivory tower and being inside of that's good if that's all that you want to do, but we've got to come outside of the walls there. We need to be in the community. We got to find that central or that center, that space to be able to do it. I bring up the Black Panther Party because of the way that they fed, the community. They had, nutrition programs. We connected. I don't know if y'all know his name is Canada, last name Canada, in Harlem, New York, the Harlem Children's Zone.
Jeffrey Canada.
Jeffrey Canada, yes, he was just here at Odessa College last year. So things as such, we meet them where they are, their needs, the development of the children, whether that's after school care, job, something. We get outside of where we're at to be able to do that. So I preface that to say we got to go back to the community. We got to find that center and where those families are, where the network is. I don't know if it's the car show. I don't know. We've got to find it where they're at. So
one of the things that I'm doing, I'm a part of an organization. I've joined several organizations, but there's an organization I'm really excited about. It's called Community Frontline here in Fort Worth. You might want to write it down and call out to them. But Community Frontline is an organization I've been working with for the last 6 months. Actually, I work as one of the consultants. I'm on a team now. But they get out in the community. They go to the people. They meet with them. So we meet up at the Doc Bookshop. We meet the third Thursday of every month at the Doc Bookshop from 6 to 8. We start off at 6 o'clock. We open up by pouring libations and remember our ancestors. We play the drums. Then we eat. Now, after we get through eating, then I lecture for an hour. So we together and we interacting for an hour with libations, right? Pouring the libation, we got to plant. Then we feed them. Then we playing the African drums. And then after we do that, we go right into the lesson, right? It's been going really well. This is probably my 6th time doing it. So 6 months in a row. Been going really well. A lot of people from the community come in and she's right. We got to go to the people. The other thing that I'm doing with Martin Luther King Center, Paula Jackson from the Martin Luther King Center, and they're trying to write a proposal where I will come in and teach the elderly. So you know how the senior citizens are there at the community center? So I went to Como this summer and went in there and started teaching the people, man, them old people, I call them young. Them old people, when I say they loved it, they loved it, Dr. Smith. When I say loved it, and so
That's cool.
Nice, and I want to give them my books. So I'm going to get, because in my book, it has 50 questions that you should know and answers, right? So I'm giving, they wouldn't let me give them the books. They bought them books for me.
Wow.
You know what I said? They wanted to learn. They was like, one of the ladies, older ladies, literally cried, y'all. She was crying like, I just knew, but nobody ever believed me. I mean, just literally crying. It hurt my heart. It was like her. She was like, I knew, and she got to crying. She said, she was a teacher for years. She said she knew, and she got to crying. And then it was a guy that was in there. He actually works at O.D. Wyatt. And I wanted to bring the drums in to let them play the African drums. Do y'all know that the African drum is the only musical instrument that has ever been banned in America? Did y'all know that?
Really?
So when we go to school and they show an art, so I'm here in Texas, they have the mariachi band. Y'all know what the mariachi band is, right? How y'all know what a
Right.
mariachi band is? You jog your head. How you know about the mariachi band? I'll wait. How do y'all know about the mariachi
I know we're
Well,
going
part
out
of,
going Mexican restaurants.
Cause they,
and
cause
I'm
they
in
always, they always
I'm
bring it to
like,
campus,
So they
yeah,
bring it to school.
got the bands and everything. You know that Tex Fort Worth has one of the most renowned mariachi bands in the country.
mm,
Right.
But I proposed it, well, how could, and one of the guys from the mariachi band, so when Northside plays their football game, guess what they play? The mariachi band plays. Guess what the football player says? Oh man, we hear our music, it fires us up. And that's how we win our games because, you know, it's a part of our culture. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Very interesting. Then when you ask the question, well, where's the African drum? How come we don't have no African drum? And so I go to O.D. Wyatt and the teacher says, well, happens it? There's a guy, I ain't gonna tell you, happened to be my frat brother. And he was like, I do music therapy. I said, well, then tell me about the drum. That's not true. I pull up my phone, I research every damn thing. He was like, whoa, I didn't know that. I said, I told you, bro. They don't let you do that. He said, well, then he gave me another excuse for why we don't have a drum. I said, but they spend thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars about mariachi bands, uniforms. The kids don't have to pay for the uniform. They don't have to pay for the instruments. They don't have to pay for carrying it. But we can't have no African drums. That don't make sense. So I said, okay, well,
Right.
do yours. But what about ours? And what y'all need to hear on this call right now, it's all right for everybody else's culture, but not for us. Where do you go see, and when you see people outside of us, but more talking about their culture, they're normally from Africa, right? But then when you talk to the African, they still ain't got the culture, right? Because they still was colonialized by the Europeans, right? Go to Nigeria, go to Ghana, listen to them. I know I done been with them, right? So when you start hearing that, let me leave you with this. Did you all know that the original name of Africa is Al-Kebalan? Can I tell you what that means? You ready? It means Garden of Eden or Mother Earth. It literally means that. That's why I said www and the DNA. The original name for Egypt, the ancient name for Egypt is Kemet, and it literally means land of the blacks. So little certain things, if you go and define it for them and show it to them, and here's the part you're going to get, it's never out of their head.
yeah.
They will never, ever forget it. If you wake them up and pull that light on, that light does not go out. It don't go out. And you have it for the rest of your life. So I told my grandson at 5, he's 8. He knows it verbatim. So when you say they will be in the schools and they changing all this, what you think Ricky Man gonna be saying when the teacher start talking? Oh, excuse me. He ain't
Right.
excuse me. Pythagoras is not the father of math. Y'all know that, right? Y'all heard this. Y'all educators. You'll probably get a degree in this. Pythagoras is the father of math. Remember that story, right? And you
Oh yeah.
the father of geometry, right?
Right.
Yep.
How can you be the father of math and the father of geometry and they can't build a pyramid?
Right.
He was quiet, right? Never thought about that, had you, Dr. Smith? But now that you heard it, you'll never forget that again. You like, wait a minute. Damn, that makes sense. And what I tell the kids, and y'all can hear me, I know we almost out of here, but I tell the kids this. I don't teach truth. What did I just say? I don't teach truth. I teach facts. You can question truth, but you can't question facts. So I don't talk about the truth, but I talk about the facts so that they can touch, see, and feel it. Because if you speak the truth, we go back and forth. That's not a dialogue, that's a discussion.
Right.
With facts, you can have a dialogue. I listen to you, you listen to me. When they hear about the pyramids, I say, well, there's actually 3 pyramids, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. How did they put them in the center of the earth? So that means they had to be here 50,000 years and know that every 50,000 years that the stars shine in the center of the earth. They studied the universe. When they thought the earth was flat, we knew that the earth was round. Well, how did y'all know it? We put the pyramid in the center of the earth. And most of y'all graduated from a university. Do you know why they call them the universities? I'll wait. Why do they call them the universities? Anybody? It's not a guess question. The reason why they call it the university because they studied the damn universe.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know they studied the universe? They put the pyramid in the center of the universe. One of the first universities called the University of Bologna. Y'all do know that, right? It was called the University of Bologna. And when they would come there to the college, they would come to sit on the feet of our African people. But when they got there, they start doing price gouging, like raising the price where you live, raising the price where you eat, raising the price. So they came together with the students and the teachers and organized, and that's how we started having on-campus universities. Before then, you just go and sit at the feet of the people in Ghana, Ghana, Timbuktu, sit at their feet. Remember, Socrates killed himself. Aristotle,
Right.
poet, because they told him to quit telling them the truth. So he just drank the poison and killed his damn self because he wanted to let them know that they got it from the Africans. And the other thing that's important, you know, that when you think about the Egyptian culture, anytime somebody come and take over something, right, they bring their own culture. When Alexander the Wicked came, they embraced the Kemet culture. Didn't change anything, just took ownership of it.
Right.
So when you start talking like that, now you know I had to check my brother the other day with the Alpha. Like, come on, man, I'm not Greek. Do I look Greek to you? The Greeks didn't start this. We taught them. They didn't teach us. Now we run around talking about Greek this, Greek. I'm not Greek. Right? They be thinking I'm crazy in there. Mark, calm down. I'm like, no. Let's just teach the truth. Why can't he said we've been doing this since 1903, 1906? Okay, well, this is the year 2022. Tell them the truth.
Tell the truth.
Tell them it's not a Hermacan. Tell them that it's not a Sphinx, it's a Hermacan. Teach them. Tell them where they got the information from. They're looking at me like I'm crazy, man. And I know we got some brothers on there. I want you to know. Tell the president I said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we get out of here, Dr. Anderson, Brother Clark, do y'all have any books or any place that individuals could use and increase their learning past this conversation that we're having today that y'all would like to share? And maybe you can type it in the chat or whatever. But we would like to be able to extend their knowledge about some of the things that we talked about during this conversation, and so therefore they can do their own research.
And I want them to research, but you can go to rickyclark.com. That's RICKIECLARK.com, and you'll pull it up and it'll have my books in it. But the first book that I wrote, called What My Daddy Should Have Told Me, there's a topic in there about his story. And in it, I give you 7 books that you should read, 7 documentaries. So I give 7 books, 7 documentaries, 7 poems, and 7 television programs to watch that would help you with that. And then my second book, I wrote from kindergarten to 12th grade, will give you 50 questions that every African should know with the answers. And it also tells you 50 documentaries, 50 books, and the authors, so what you should get. So I think that's very important. But if I could slow down, I would say there are a couple of books that I would encourage people to read for me that changed my life. And that was Vision for the Black Man by Naeem Akbar. And then The Browder File by Anthony Browder. And then it was what's his name? Akihata Mabuti. Akihar R. Matabuti. He wrote Black Man, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous. And from what I do, is any book that I read, you always read the reference books. And then I read the reference books that read the reference books. And then I read the reference book from the reference books. Because now I have to walk around and quote like people, Mr. Farrakhan, say, no, I went and looked it up for myself. And we got something, y'all, that we ain't never had before. You got this information in the palm of your hand. Y'all don't know about the encyclopedia. You know, y'all know anything about encyclopedias? And we had our encyclopedias, we never had the whole set.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So now we got it all right here. So just pull it up and do the research. So that's what I would say to the audience.
Okay.
So you got to give a book that speaks to you. So if I told you some books, they may be okay, but if it don't speak to your spirit, the last thing I'll say is if anybody's not reading, read, because readers are leaders and leaders read.
Yes, yes. I'm going to echo. I haven't read Brother Clark's books. I'm going to have to pick it up now. I'll go to your website and do that. I'm always stating, and I can give you a whole plethora of books, but I think you need to read on both sides. I definitely recommend the books that you're reading, but also read what the mainstream books are, because you want to weigh the options of, well, this book comes from this perspective, and this is what I did with students. You know, we had this perspective from the Afrocentric perspective, and then there's a Eurocentric perspective, and I want them to be able to tell me comparatively what the differences are and be able to discuss that a bit more. But a book that I would say a historian and sociologist that really influenced me was John Henrik Clarke.
Oh, yeah.
And you could read all of his books are fantastic. I love John Henrik Clarke's books. And then I would also say another big proponent in talking about Africa and then the connection to the Americas is Ivan van Sertima, Before Columbus. They came before Columbus, talking about Africans in the Americas. Very interesting perspective of looking at the world.
I read, both of them.
Yes, absolutely.
Or you can go with the destruction of Black civilization.
That's right.
It's an older book, but it's packed with information. The further you go back, the darker the gods. Just go back. He brings it back as about.
Oh yeah.
He became blind when he was writing the book. So yeah.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Please check him out.
So appreciate y'all dropping that. Dantrayl, what quote you have for us today, sir?
All right, man. It's heavy, so be ready. I got to make up for last week. So, the quote starts: "You must resist the common urge toward the conforming narrative of divine law, toward fairy tales that imply some irreplaceable justice. The enslaved were not bricks in your road, and their lives were not chapters in your redemptive history. They were people turned to fuel for the American machine. Enslavement was not designed to end, and it is wrong to claim our present circumstances, no matter how improved, as the redemption for the lives of people who never asked for the posthumous, untouchable glory of dying for their children. Our triumphs can never compensate for this. Tanishi Kotes, Between the World and Me."
Oh, wow. You got 4 more minutes. Can I drop you one too?
All right, what you got?
All right. Well, I'm gonna quote MK Asante,
Yes.
the youngest Black person to ever get tenure at a college, and he went to our
Temple. Yes.
got in internal school and got in trouble all the time for writing. So they told him to write a poem. So he wrote 2 sets of notes to go back to what she says, and I quote: "Sometimes I feel like I'm above the ground and the ceiling, in institutions that disengage in healing. Instead, open warp wounds trap me in room consumed with hypocrisy. But it occurs to me that Greek philosophers didn't author their own philosophy. Statues on campus be watching me, Washington, Jefferson, Williams, clocking me to say, Negro, your time is up. But I don't run laps around, I run laps around scholars of tomorrow, because new school of thought is merely our history borrowed. They label me militant, Black national radical, trying to put my learning process on sabbatical. But I don't apologize, get the truth to the whites of their eyes, infected by white lies. They even try to get me to see their point of view by a brother that looks like me. Their brother don't walk like me, talk like me, or act like me. He even turned his head and ran when I asked if he was Black like me. Memorizing their thoughts and forgetting our own, and wonder why we always feel alone. From the media to academia, hanging our brothers like coats, and in their schools, I always take 2 sets of notes. 1 set to ace the test, and 1 set to know the truth. And when I find historical contradiction, I use the first set as proof. Proof that our youth minds are being polluted, convoluted, diluted, not culturally rooted in anything except Western massacre. Most of us are scared of Africa. We view our mother's land through the eyes of David Ham and Emmanuel Can. But Emmanuel can't tell me about a land he never seen, a land rich with history, beautiful kings and queens. But they'll have you to believe otherwise, that history is built off high-rise lines of pyramids were complete before Rome or Greece were conceptualized. And then they'll claim that the Egyptian race is a mystery. You tell them, read, he wrote this book too. It's their history. It can't get any clearer. Young people, look in the mirror. We are the reflection of divinity. Don't be fooled by selective memory. Walk high and listen to the elders who spoke. Young people always take 2 sets of notes. Thank you.
Love it.
Ooh,
Thank you.
man.
Brother Clark, you know you special. We let you do a quote after we let Dantrayl, so you gotta
I'm
be
sorry,
special.
Dantrayl.
Right.
All right. I really appreciate y'all having here, and for the listeners, and anything that we can do. And I know we got to do more of this, right? Because if we talk more, they'll hear more, and then they'll act. So if there's anything I can do, please invite me out. I'm available, 817-448-2787. You can hit me on Facebook or Instagram, or even come to my webpage, rickyclark.com. You don't have to buy the books online. You can buy the books from me and I will come to you and do a presentation. If you get 25 people to buy a book, I'll come do a PowerPoint presentation for free. Just give them to buy the books. All right. And they $15 a book. So I made it reasonable for you to buy. All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, let me say this to our panelists. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson, Brother Clark. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, man, because I know that it's you're gonna bring that fire like you always do. And so to all our listeners, as you all know, I post all of our recorded videos every Monday. So tune in Monday so you can watch this video and share this video with others. And tune in next week as we talk about school shootings. Are our kids safe? And so we have some powerful individuals that are going to be coming on and breaking down some real good knowledge for us. So make sure you tune in next week.
All right. There's a flyer out for that. I want to see it so I can make sure I tell some of my students to listen to it. So they're listening today. So if anything I can do, get it to me and I'll pass it out.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank y'all again for being here. Be safe.
Thank you.
Have a safe evening and see y'all next week.